Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar and workshop series conducted by TCS in lieu of the upcoming SCS exams happening in November 2025. And my name is Nick, and I'm the lead tutor and evaluator for SCS at TCS. So let's look at the session plan. I'm not going to take a lot of time. I'm going to wrap it up as soon as possible because I know for a fact that you are involved with your last minute preparation. So first things first, in the first part of today's workshop, I'm going to share some tips to make sure that you are confident about yourself. And then, as usual, I will be conducting a Q&A towards the very end of today's session. So with regards to, building your confidence and, maintaining it both before the exam and during the exam. So let's first try to understand what you need to do before the examination with the intention of building your positivity. So it's essential that you rest your mind and body, because as per the study plans which we actually shared two study plans with you. One was focused on an 8-week program. Most of you stuck to it, and some joined us halfway through and focused on them. I shared a 3-week study plan as well. And irrespective of the time duration of these two study plans, I mentioned the fact that you should start relaxing during the exam week. So from tomorrow onwards, we are starting the exam week. As you know, exams are happening from Wednesday to Friday of this week. So it's essential that you take steps to rest both mentally and physically, because if you are well rested before the exam, you will manage your stress levels extremely well at your real examination. On the other hand, if you are stressed before the exam, definitely you are going to be stressed during the exam as well. So it's essential that you start resting both mentally and physically. So that is why, if you really want to do something, I do not want you to, refer to any study material. Don't try to go through mock exams and answer plans and whatnot. Don't try to go through suggested answers. You have done enough. If you really want to go through some material, if you really start doubting yourself, or if you're feeling anxious, simply go through the answer plans. That is only if you really want to do so. If not, forget about anything else. Start relaxing, because if you are attempting your exam on Wednesday, for instance, you have to start resting 2 days before. So by tonight, you have to stop all your preparations, assuming that you are attempting the exam on Wednesday. So take Monday and Tuesday off. And when you are well rested 2 days before the examination, you are in a mindset to manage a stressful situation at your real examination. So I do not want you to be attempting any mock exams right now. If there are any mocks which are yet to be attempted, forget about attempting them under real exam conditions. Instead, simply go through the questions and the suggested answers, or if you have access to the answer plans, simply go through the questions and the answer plans. Try to gain an understanding of the logic behind each answer, because in these final hours, what you are supposed to do is to simply focus your attention towards revision. And the best way to revise is to go through answer plans. So you have access to 7 answer plans in total, which cover 63 subtasks. And when you go through these answer plans, it's as if you are going through the entire syllabus one last time. And at the same time, you are refreshing your memory of how to structure or how to approach each syllabus area, and therefore how to structure your answers effectively concerning each syllabus area. So that's the only thing which you need to do in these final hours leading up to your examination. I do not want you guys to be stressed before the exam, because I've seen students, especially at examination centers, right before the exam. I've seen students trying to go through mock exams, trying to discuss questions and answers with their colleagues, which makes absolutely no sense, because as I mentioned on multiple occasions in this webinar and workshop series, the examiner tries to replicate a real-life corporate environment. So in a real-life corporate environment, even if you are the CEO of your company, you are not in a position to predict what is going to happen in the future. So don't try to predict what can be tested at the exam. What you have done is enough. You have put in a lot of effort in the previous weeks, and you have gone through mock exams, you have gone through suggested answers, you have probably redeveloped answer plans or gone through our answer plans. You would have watched our master classes. So you have put in all the hard yards by now. So it's time for you to relax right now rather than pressurizing yourself too much leading up to the examination. And in these final days, it's best that you think that you are the senior finance manager of Cewmlator, because if you think in those terms, if you really think that you're actually working for this company, you will come up with practical recommendations, you will evaluate in a practical manner, and as long as you are practical at this examination, you can pass comfortably. So if you are coming through the traditional routes, if you have done your operational case study as well as the management case study, and when you compare these two OCS and MCS exams to the SCS exam, you would have realized that theories are not actually heavily tested. Instead, it all comes down to testing your practical application skills, practical decision-making skills. So the examiner, since you are playing the role of a senior finance manager, since you are directly reporting to board members, the examiner is testing whether you can actually carry out an evaluation in a practical manner and whether you can come up with recommendations which are justified, and whether these recommendations will actually help some type of an issue which the organization is help the organization overcome some type of an issue it is facing at the moment. So it all comes down to being practical. So in order to think in a practical manner, think that you are actually carrying out this role. When you are following this mindset, or when you are adhering to this mindset, then you will try to come up with the best type of answers, because that's exactly what you do at office. Just like what you do at office, just like how you will come up with appropriate evaluations and come up with recommendations which are well justified. Replicate the same methodology, and it's easy for you to do so when you think in a practical manner, and when you think that you're actually working for this company as a senior finance manager. And it's quite normal for you to feel anxious or negative. However much prepared you are going to feel negative. If I talk about myself, I couldn't attend any classes because I was busy with office work. So because of that, the only option at my disposal was to conduct my studies on my own. So I was self-studying, and as a student who was involved with self-studies, I had to stick to a study plan, and I always made sure to stick to a study plan. Even after doing this, 2 or 3 days before the examination, there was a tendency for me to try and reattempt mock exams once more. So when I've attempted mock exams, I used to attempt 4 or 5 mock exams. And when I've attempted 4 or 5 mock exams, well before the examination, in the final 2 or 3 days, when I'm going to replicate the same methodology once more by attempting 3 or 4 mock exams once more, I was so stressed. I didn't have time to sleep. I was only sleeping for just 2 or 3 hours per day, which did not actually help me during my examination, because I was stressed and fatigued. And when you are stressed and fatigued, you cannot function properly, because at the exam, since you have already attempted mocks under exam conditions, you know what I'm talking about. It's a tough situation. You have to sit in one place across 3 hours and attempt 3 sections one after the other without breaks between sections. So it's not easy, especially towards section number 3. You will feel fatigued, and when you are fatigued, there's a high tendency for you to experience brain freeze. So it's a tough situation. That's why I'm asking you not to repeat the mistakes which I did when I was preparing as a student. Instead, I want you to be calm and composed before your examination, because if you are calm and composed, if you're relaxed, you will function really well during your exam. There's absolutely no point of stressing yourself unnecessarily, knowing very well that you have done your homework, done the hard yards in the previous weeks. So it's quite normal for you to be anxious. Even if you had stuck to a study plan, don't worry. Whenever you feel anxious or whenever you feel negative, always remind yourself about all the hard effort which you have put in the final weeks, or in the previous weeks. And at the same time, remind yourself that you just need 80 marks to pass the examination. So even if you screw up half your subtasks, you are going to pass this exam if you are confident. So always, it's quite normal for you to be or feel negative. Whenever you feel negative, remind yourself that you have done your homework, and also remind yourself that you just need 54% or 80 marks to pass this examination. And it's best practice to be open-minded in these final days. That is exactly why I'm asking you guys not to refer to any mock exams, suggested answers, or answer plans in these final days. If you really want to do it 2 days before your examination. You have to complete all your work and stop your preparations 2 days before the exam. Take a break, and this break will ensure that you are walking into the exam with a higher level of positivity and open-mindedness. Because at this exam, as I mentioned earlier, your decision-making capabilities are tested. So when you are conducting your evaluations or recommending something, you have to make sure that you are only utilizing the information which is shared with you via each unseen. If you try to memorize the answers which appeared in the mock exams which you attempted, this is not going to help you at your exam. So when conducting your revision, I said that the objective is to understand the logic behind each answer, not to memorize these answers. Because at the exam, what you're supposed to do is to consider the exact information presented in the unseen, understand the requirement clearly, and then develop an answer which is aligned with the requirement and the unseen's info. So if you try to memorize what appeared within the mock exams, and what type of answers appeared in the suggested answers, that is not going to help you at your exam. Because at the exam, when developing your answers, you have to totally rely on your skills and capabilities, your decision-making capabilities, and always make sure that your answers are fully aligned with unseen info, rather than, referring to information which you saw within your mock exams. So that's why I want you guys to be open-minded, because if you're open-minded, you are in a position to do your job properly as a senior finance manager. So your role is to play your objective should be to play the role of a decision maker. And if you are to come up with the best type of decisions, you have to be rational. And if you are to be rational, you have to be open-minded. All right. So that's why I'm asking you guys to rest at least 2 days before your examination. And having said that, let's try to understand what you are expected to achieve during the exam with the intention of maintaining the same level of positivity. So first things first, as I mentioned in the fourth webinar, stick to the exam technique routine, because when you do so, you are utilizing your prefrontal cortex in the first 35 minutes, and in the final 25 minutes of each section, you are enabling or you are making sure that your prefrontal cortex can rest for a while. Why am I saying this? Because if you didn't attend webinar number 4, you won't understand what I'm talking about. So if you look at how our brain functions, at the examination, you are supposed to come up with the most rational type of decisions. So if you are to be rational during the exam, you have to think through your prefrontal cortex, or the front part of your brain. But the problem is, you cannot utilize your prefrontal cortex for more than 45 minutes, because when you are overburdening your prefrontal cortex, your brain will ask you to take a break. But at the exam, you can't do so. So you have to find some shortcuts which will ensure that you are allowing your prefrontal cortex to rest for a while. So that's exactly what you are achieving by sticking to our exam technique routine, because when you are reading, you have to be really focused. And when you are developing the answer plan or structuring your answer, again, you have to be really focused. However, when it comes to typing, since you have already developed an answer plan, since you know what you should include in your answers, when you are typing or finalizing your answer, it's simply a matter of expanding each point which appeared within the answer plan. So when you know what to type, when you know what type of points you need to include in your answer, typing becomes easy, because you need not really think. You have already planned out your answer. When it comes to typing, it's simply a matter of expanding each answer point in paragraph form. So if you stick to this answering technique, you are supposed to utilize your prefrontal cortex in the first 35 minutes of each section, but towards the remaining time, which is 10, 20 to 25 minutes, towards the very end of each section, you are letting your prefrontal cortex rest. And if you do so, you won't encounter brain freeze or undue levels of stress. So that's the best practice. You have practiced this throughout these weeks whenever you were attempting mock exams under exam conditions. So by now you should have mastered this technique. So carry on your practice to your exam and simply implement the same methodology, same techniques. If you do so, you will manage your stress levels effectively, and at the same time, you will manage your time, and you are also taking steps to structure your answers appropriately. So even after doing this, you will feel stressed, especially towards the latter parts of section 2 and section number 3, because by the time you are done with half of your paper, fatigue sets in. Okay, because as I mentioned earlier, your prefrontal cortex can focus on something for something like 45 minutes. But when you are stressing your prefrontal cortex too much or pushing your prefrontal cortex too much, due to fatigue, you will experience extreme levels of stress. Extreme levels of stress leads to something called brain freeze. And when you are experiencing brain freeze, you are trying to read something, nothing goes into your head. You might be trying to develop the answer plan. You cannot type anything, nothing comes into your mind. And you might be trying to, expand your answer plans. You might be struggling to do so. This happens when you are stressing your brain too much. So due to stress and fatigue, you will encounter brain freeze. So whenever you encounter such situations, even after sticking to our exam technique routine, you have to get out of a stressful situation by switching off your amygdala. Again, I explain what the amygdala is in the 4th webinar. So there's this small part of our brain which is known as the amygdala, which gives us the fight, or which exposes us to a fight or flight response whenever we are encountering extreme levels of stress. So at the exam, you can't avoid the stressful situations. You can't walk off your cubicle, or you can't walk off your computer. Instead, you have to sit in one place and keep fighting the stressful situation. And the only way to fight a stressful situation is to switch off your amygdala. And the only way to switch off your amygdala is to focus on your breathing for 2 minutes. So as I mentioned in the 4th webinar, you are supposed to focus on your breathing for 2 minutes, close your eyes and focus on your breathing for 2 minutes. And when doing so, inhale through your nose and exhale from your mouth. When inhaling, count to 3 slowly. And when exhaling, again, count to 3 slowly. And this is the only way to make sure that you overcome brain freeze. I've explained this in the 4th webinar. If you missed it, please go watch it. And I expect that you would have practiced this technique when attempting each of our mock exams, because in the 3rd webinar, I explained an answering and time management technique. And in the 4th webinar, I taught you a stress management technique as well. And I wanted you guys to practice these 3 techniques, answering, time management, and stress management, whenever you were attempting mock exams. I hope you would have practiced them. And by now, since you're done with all mock exams, I'm pretty sure that you have got your bearings with all 3, answering, time management, and stress management techniques, which you have learned and practiced so far. So implement the same methodology at your examination, because at this exam, the examiner is not just testing your theory knowledge and application. The examiner is also testing whether you are capable of managing a stressful situation. This is the final CIMA examination. If you overcome this hurdle, you will become a management accountant. And at the same time, you are well poised to climb the corporate ladder. And most students start their own businesses. So if you are to be a successful corporate citizen, if you are to be a successful businessman, then you have to have the capability to manage your stress levels effectively. So that is why the examiner is creating a stressful situation to see whether you will manage your stress levels. So it's essential that you do this breathing technique and get out of stressful situations, just like what you have practiced when attempting mocks. Because if you are capable of managing your stress levels, you need not worry about passing this exam, because you have gained a lot of knowledge in the previous weeks. You have practiced your answering, time management, and stress management. So you have built various different skills. So it's simply a matter of managing your stress levels at your exam. If you manage your stress, you will come up with the best type of answers, best type of decisions. And when this is the case, you can easily pass this examination. And when you are, focusing on your breathing, you can always remind yourself about what you have, the amount of work you have put in, about the fact that you have attempted 6 mock exams so far. You have gone through 7 mock exams, and you have gone through the answer plans. You have redeveloped answer plans. You have watched master classes. You have spent a considerable amount of time to revise your techniques, revise your knowledge. So all these things, remind yourself whenever you feel stressed, because this will give you some type of positivity. And when you are positive, brain functions will shift back to your prefrontal cortex. So with the intention of switching off your amygdala, focus on your breathing and get out of a stressful situation. And when you are focusing on your breathing, again, you should remind yourself that you just need 80 marks to pass, or as a percentage, you just need 54% to pass. So as I mentioned earlier, even if you go wrong in half of your subtasks, still you can pass this examination. So in a section, let's assume you are in section number 2, and there are 2 subtasks. So out of these 2 subtasks, let's assume that you're struggling with subtask A, but you're quite comfortable with subtask B. So when it comes to developing the answer plan, develop the answer plan focused on subtask B first, because you're comfortable with it. Once you're done with section B's answer plan, you will see some boost of confidence, and this boost of confidence will ensure that you come up with an appropriate answer for subtask A. So previously, when you were struggling with subtask A, but when you're done with section 2 or subtask B, and when you have gained some additional confidence, these confidence levels will ensure that you tackle subtask A without any hiccups as well. And whenever you are stuck for answers, try to come up with a practical answer as much as possible, because you have learned a lot of things, a lot of concepts. You have gained a lot of knowledge in the previous weeks. So if you think in a practical manner, and if you really think that you are working for this company, and if you really think how you can assist the board members to overcome a certain situation the company is facing at the moment, then you are coming up with the best type of answer. So if you feel stuck in a certain subtask, don't worry. Try to come up with a practical answer, because although you might be doubting yourself or doubting the credibility of your answers, you would be amazed to find out that you have passed this examination. So when dealing with students in the past 5 or 6 years, what I've understood is the fact that I get calls from students after they are done with their exams, and almost all students say that they are going to repeat the examination. Even the individual who scored 122 marks last time, who was the best scorer at TCS. So last time there was this individual who was coming through the exemption route, and landed at SCS directly. And it was this individual's first CIMA case study, was struggling a lot, but put in a lot of effort towards the last 2 weeks and made sure to cover or attempt all mock exams. Didn't get good marks when I was marking this individual's paper as well. But I said that if you watch the master classes and if you redevelop answer plans, you can easily pass the examination. After the exam, this individual WhatsApped me and said that he will have to repeat the examination. But when the results were out, this individual scored 122 marks. So the same individual who scored 122 marks was doubting himself during the examination. And that's why this guy texted me and said that he wants to purchase the premium course once more. All right, so you will feel this way during your examination, especially when you encounter subtasks which you're not too comfortable with, because sometimes the requirements might not be too clear. That's these requirements are developed intentionally by the examiner with the intention of creating a stressful environment, testing whether you can manage your stress levels. So whenever you are shaken, don't give up. Focus on your breathing, get out of a stressful situation, and come up with a practical answer. Because if you are practical, you will come up with justified recommendations, justified evaluations. If so, you will pass this examination. And sometimes you can have a water bottle with you if you are attempting the exam at an examination center. If so, drink some water, or because this will help you calm your nerves as well. So you are definitely going to feel stressed at the exam. The examiner will include certain subtasks with the prime intention of stressing you out to see whether you are managing your stress levels effectively. So don't give in, don't give up, focus on your breathing, come out of a stressful situation, and make sure to give your best shot. And in order to give your best shot, if you're struggling with certain subtasks, don't give up. Simply come up with a practical solution, a practical answer. If you do so, then you can pass this exam comfortably. So, in order not to be stressed at the examination, you have to take steps to relax in these final days leading up to the exam. So, don't go through any study material, as I mentioned earlier. If you really want to do something, simply go through the answer plans. That's the only thing which you need to do. I'm not asking you to develop or redevelop answer plans. Simply read through the answer plans which you have access to. Other than that, don't do anything. I want you to walk into the exam with calm and composed mindset. I want you to walk into the exam relaxed, well relaxed, and I want you to walk into the exam without any stresses, because the exam is stressful. So, when trying to tackle a stressful situation, it's essential that you are well rested. And when you are resting, you are making sure that you are walking into the exam with an open mind. If you are open minded, you will come up with the best type of answers at your exam, because in this exam, as I mentioned earlier, your decision making capabilities are heavily tested. It's not about developing answers which are highly theoretical. Instead, when developing answers, yes, you should utilize what we have learned via the theories and concepts which you have learned via your E3, F3, and P3 syllabi. But since you have gone through all mock exams, you know how each syllabus area is tested and how to tackle each syllabus area. So it's simply a matter of thinking in a practical manner. And if you are to think in a practical manner, you have to achieve a high level of open-mindedness. And the only way to be open-minded at the exam is to relax before your examination. So I hope you will practice these techniques which I shared with you right now. Don't try to overburden yourself. Start relaxing. And at the exam, your job is simply to manage your stress levels. And with the intention of managing your stress levels, stick to our exam technique routine. And whenever you feel stressed, breathe and get out of a stressful situation. And if you're struggling with a subtask, don't worry, come up with a practical answer, because you just need 54% or 80 marks to pass this examination. So I hope you will practice these things, and those who did ended up scoring good marks at the previous sitting. So in the August SCS exams, we achieved a 91% pass rate. Almost everyone passed the examination simply by being confident 2 or 3 days before the examination. So I want you guys to practice the techniques which I shared with you right now to make sure that you pass this exam comfortably. All right, so having said that, I'm moving to the Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can switch on your mic and talk, or drop us a message via the chat. So let's see whether Kevin is saying no water allowed in the exam center. Yes, that's exactly why, Kevin, I said that in certain exam centers, you can't have a water bottle with you, but some invigilators are totally fine with this. So you can't really depend on this to manage a stressful situation. That's why I said that you should focus on your breathing and get out of a stressful situation. Anything else, folks? Any questions? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling negative? What are you involved with in these final days or hours leading up to the examination? So SK is saying, I feel as if I'm starting to forget basic concepts leading up to the exam. This is due to stress. So don't worry, you are going to be totally fine at your exam, because if you said the same thing at the OCS exam, I'd be worried, because at the OCS exam, 85% of the questions are intended to test your theory knowledge or conceptual knowledge. But in this exam, it's all about coming up with a practical answer. If you had gone through the mocks, the suggested answers, as well as the answer plans, you would have realized this. So don't worry about concepts, because these concepts are not really heavily tested. So it's all about being practical. And even if you screw up one subtask, you won't fail this exam, because you just need to score 54% to pass. So don't worry. Simply, if you really want, simply go through the answer plans. That's the best way to brush up your knowledge. Other than that, you have to focus on, stopping all your work and relaxing. I hope I addressed your concern. And another individual is saying the same thing. Yes, really anxious. That's quite all right. However much prepared you are, you will feel anxious, because we are human beings. You will feel butterflies in your stomach. For instance, I can remember before each CIMA exam, I used to throw up. That was a routine. I don't know why. Probably because I was so stressed before the examination. So I was a student, as I mentioned earlier, I stuck to a study plan at all times. Yet on the day of the exam, I felt really negative and anxious. But it's quite normal. So get out of a stressful situation by breathing. You will feel anxious. Don't worry. Remind yourself about what you have done so far, and on top of that, remind yourself that you just need 80 to pass this examination. Anne is asking a question in relation to valuing a target company using the discounted cash flow method. Could you just explain FCS and FCFE? I have gone over this, but what is FCF and FCFE? But I am still a bit confused about these methods, or am I getting it bit too technical? Yeah, so can you please indicate what FCF and FCFE is? I think you are thinking in technical terms too much, because the discounted cash flow method is not the sole method which is there to value a company. There are various different methods as well, because you can utilize you can opt for market based valuation utilizing a PE ratio, or you if the company is asset heavy, then you can use the net asset base as a valuation technique as well. On top of that, you can utilize, if you are certain about the cash flows generated by a company, then you can opt for the discounted cash flow method. You need not mention the nitty-gritties concerning the discounted cash flow method when you're thinking about DCF. Only talk about the WACC, because the discount rate is based on the WACC, and talk about how you should determine the accurate WACC. Other than that, you need not go into technicalities, because the examiner is not just all these calculations, carrying out, or doing all these calculations is not your job role. Instead, this type of calculations will be done by someone at the operational or management levels. You are at the strategic level, you are reporting directly to board members. So as a senior finance manager, you are not supposed to remember or mention these technical nitty-gritties in your answers, because as I mentioned earlier, if the question is focused on company valuation methods, then simply talk about market-based valuation, which is utilizing the PE ratio. Then you can look at the cash flows, thereby going for the DCF or the discounted cash flow method. Or if the company is asset heavy, you can utilize the net asset based valuation as well. However, I hope you can stipulate what this FCF and FCFE is all about. Kevin is asking a question. Thanks, Nick. I'm feeling much better after this session. Glad to hear this, mate. I failed in August and was heavily low on confidence. You know, it all comes down to you managing your stress levels during the exam. So probably you didn't in your previous sitting. Probably you ran out of time because of it. Don't worry, because no one is going to, pass all these exams without failing. Highly unlikely that is going to be the case, because at office, think in a practical manner. In life, are we going to take the best type of decisions? At office, are we going to take the best type of decisions? We might come up with a decision and somebody else might come up with a better decision. That's how life is, so your job is not to really contemplate about the quality of your decisions. Instead, try to come up with the best type of a decision based on what's highlighted within each unseen, and always make sure to stick to the answering technique which we highlighted in the third webinar. If so, you need not worry. And another individual is asking, important to relax and manage stress levels. Yes, indeed. And God bless you too. SK is saying, yes, I will be doing that today. Great. Charles is saying, afternoon, I have just joined. Maybe you could have tackled it already. Are you able to advise on the number of points to write based on the weightage? For example, 60%. So Charles, I explained these things in depth in the third webinar, which happened about a month back, if I'm not mistaken. No, 5 weeks back. And in each workshop, I highlighted this as well. So if I repeat myself, each section carries a total mark allocation of 50. So 60% of 50 marks come up to 30 marks in total. And each valid point carries 2 or 3 marks. So in order to determine how many points you need to develop to gain 30 marks, first divide 30 by 2. The answer is 15. And again, divide 30 by 3. The answer is 10. So if you develop, or if you include 10 to 15 valid points, you are going to score 30 marks. So that's how we are supposed to determine mark allocations based on the weightages, and based on the mark allocations, you are supposed to determine how many points you need to include in your answer. So just remember that each valid point carries 2 or 3 marks. So if you have to score 30, you need to include 10 to 15 valid points in your answer plan. I hope I addressed your concern. Free cash, okay, free cash flow and free cash flow equity. No, you need not talk about these things. These are highly technical elements, and absolutely no point of talking about these things. Simply focus on each valuation method, talk about the pros and cons. That will be necessary. It's up to the board members to decide which method to use when valuing a company. Okay, so simply highlight the 3 valuation methods and talk about the pros and cons. That would do. Natasha is asking a question. Is it correct that they mark you down if you theory dump, and how do you mitigate this? So Natasha, that's exactly why I said that you are supposed to think in a practical manner, because when you think practically, for instance, if there's a question which asks you to, there was a question about company valuation, yes? So if there's a question which requests you to value a certain company which we are trying to acquire, rather than explaining what the discounted cash flow method is. So Anne was previously mentioning about the free cash flow method and the free cash flow equity methods. So these are highly technical elements which leads to theory dump. So rather than dumping theory, think in a practical manner. Yes, you have to talk about valuation basis, which are taught in your F3 syllabus. So these are the theoretical elements, but now you know that you are supposed to talk about 3 valuation methods: the discounted cash flow, the market-based valuation, as well as the net asset-based valuation, and talk about the pros and cons. So when talking about the pros and cons, if you simply mention the pros and cons of each valuation method, you are not going to get marks. You have to make sure that you relate to what is highlighted within the unseen. For instance, when going for market-based valuation, you are supposed to utilize the PE ratio to determine the value of a company. But if you are acquiring a company which is unquoted, a share price is not available in the market. When the share price is not available, you cannot compute based on the PE ratio. But there's a workaround. Let's assume we are acquiring a lithium mining company which is unquoted. So you are supposed to evaluate utilizing the PE ratio, but since the share price is unavailable, what you're supposed to do is you are supposed to consider the industry average share price. There could be other lithium companies which are quoted in the stock exchange. Let's assume there are 3 different companies. So get the stock price of or the share price of these 3 different companies, divide it by 3 and determine the market price per share. And this can be utilized to compute the PE ratio of your chosen company. And there are disadvantages aligned to this method as well, because you are using someone else's share price, and this might not be reflective of what actually happens within the company which you're trying to acquire. So these type of pros and cons, you have to evaluate them in a practical manner rather than dumping theory. So yes, you have to utilize your conceptual knowledge when developing answers. I'm not saying no to that, but do it in a practical manner. And the best way to ensure that you do it in a practical manner is to make sure that you relate to the information presented in the unseen. And if you have to relate to the unseen, you have to think in a practical manner. So just think, okay, I'm actually trying to value a company, a lithium mining company. What am I expected to do when doing so? That should be your thought process. If you think in this manner, if you really think that you are working for this company, you'd avoid theory dump. I hope I addressed your concern. And similarly, if there's a question about which tests your understanding about funding options, yes, you have to talk about the gearing ratio. You have to talk about how to go ahead with a rights issue and whatnot, but think in a practical manner, come up with practical answers, refer to what appears within your unseen. That's the way to approach it. And if there's another question tied to stakeholder management, yes, you are supposed to utilize your knowledge concerning the Mendelow's matrix, but don't mention about it. Identify the stakeholders who are named in the unseen and focused on each stakeholder. Try to figure out their level of power and interest, and based on their level of power and interest, try to determine how you should manage each stakeholder. So it all comes down to what you have, the knowledge which you have gained when attempting each mock exam. So that's exactly why I said, if you really want to be involved with last minute revision, simply go through the answer plans, because then you will realize how to structure your answers properly in a practical manner, considering the exact information presented in each unseen. I hope I address your concern, Natasha. Another individual is asking, I don't all theory. I don't know theory probably. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I don't know theory such as EMH and scenario planning. Will I struggle? Well, if there's a question about scenario planning, definitely you are going to struggle, but don't worry. Scenario planning is quite easy. So scenario planning, if there's a requirement which is tied to scenario planning, specifically the examiner will say, evaluate this strategic option considering at least 3 scenarios. So whenever you see the term scenarios within the requirement, you know for a fact. And at the same time, when the examiner is within the same sentence, when the examiner is saying evaluate the strategic option, so there are 2 tools which you can utilize when evaluating a strategic option. It's either the SF framework or the scenario planning framework. So within the same requirement, as the second part, when the examiner says evaluate the strategic option, considering at least 3 scenarios, you know for a fact that you are supposed to utilize the scenario planning tool. And when it comes to scenario planning, you are supposed to consider at least 3 scenarios. The first one is the best case scenario. The second one is the most probable scenario. And the third most probable or the most practical scenario. And the third one is the worst case scenario or the negative scenario. So let's assume we are going for some type of an investment. Talk about what can be the best case scenario, what type of benefits we are going to reap due to this investment and whatnot, and what type of practical issues we are going to face when trying to go ahead with an investment with the intention of achieving the best type of profitability and revenues. So that's your best case scenario. In your worst case scenario, talk about this project not actually succeeding, what type of issues we are going to face if the project fails, and in the most probable scenario or in the most practical scenario, talk about whether we can actually implement this investment decision in the most practical manner or not. Talk about what type of shortcomings we have. It's better to talk about going ahead with a decision or implementing a decision in a staged or a phased manner in the most practical scenario. So these are the three scenarios. In the best case scenario, talk about all the positives. In the worst case scenario, talk about all the negatives. In the most probable scenario, talk about resource availability or the feasibility. And if you're trying to do something really new, then recommend to go for a phased approach or a staggered approach towards implementation under the most probable or the most practical scenario. So that's what scenario planning is all about. And talking about EMH, the efficient market hypothesis. So this is tied to share prices, share price movements. So as per the EMH, the share price reacts to information which is available to the market. So it's quite simple. Under the EMH model, if there's negative news about the company, the share price is going to drop. If there's positive news about the company, the share price is going to increase. So it's quite normal. Even if you don't know what, quite simple rather, if you don't know what EMH is, you will end up losing 2 marks. But as long as you come up with a practical answer, you can pass. SK is saying, I see a lot of talk about, I hope I addressed your concern, Zoom user. SK is saying, I see a lot of talk about beta. How do we approach these type of questions? So whenever your knowledge concerning beta is tested, linked with it, the share price, the unseen will highlight something about the share price. So I've actually included this in mock number 5, which is an exam standard question, in which although our beta is 0.56, which is well below 1, which indicates the fact that our stocks are less volatile compared to the industry average share price. Our share price has dipped significantly. So as you know, the beta indicates systematic risk exposure or the type of risks which all players within an industry face when operating within a certain industry. And company-specific risks are considered as unsystematic risks, which are not considered when computing the beta. So when the beta is low, which indicates the fact that throughout the industry, everyone or the risk levels or the risk levels which we face are significantly less. When this is the case, when there's a significant drop in the share price, then this is due to unsystematic risk or our exposure to heightened exposure to a certain risk which impacts the entire industry. So for instance, how can I explain this? So in the question which I developed, I highlighted a situation where some emission laws have come into play, which impacts all players within the industry with regards to the way in which we market ourselves as zero emission, as a zero emission manufacturer. So we can't actually claim it due to this new law. So that's the scenario which I developed. And our share price has dipped by 8% when looking at how it has impacted the other players within the industry. Other players' share price has dropped simply by 2 or 3%, whereas our share price has dropped by 8%, which is a significant drop, even when our beta is less than 1. So the requirement was to evaluate why we are exposed to such a situation. So when the zero emission marketing should change, it impacts companies which are only manufacturing battery electric vehicles heavily compared to some other company which is diversified, which is also manufacturing internal combustion engines, PHEVs and MHEVs. Since they are not only focused on BEVs, manufacturing BEVs, they are not going to be really impacted due to a change in the way in which companies are supposed to talk about or market about zero emissions. So that's the scenario which I developed. I hope I explained. I hope you understood what I explained. I don't have time to go into the nitty-gritty. So that's how your knowledge will be tested. So what you need to remember concerning the beta is the fact that the beta is computed considering systematic risks, and systematic risks are the type of risks which impact the entire industry. And on the other hand, there's another type of risk which is considered as unsystematic risk, and this highlights risks which are specific to our company. So unsystematic is specific to our company, and systematic risks are specific to the entire industry, and based on this, the beta is computed. I hope I addressed your concern. SK. Zoom user is asking, do you know any possible topics that will come up? Come on. As I've mentioned throughout this webinar and workshop series, any syllabus area can be tested. That is why I've spent a lot of effort to develop mock exams carrying 63 subtasks in total. I could have just developed 3 or 4 mock exams, just like what the others are doing, covering simply 20 to 30 subtasks. I've made sure to cover 63 subtasks in total to make sure that all syllabus areas are covered, because any syllabus area can be tested at the exam. I took you through the examiner's comments in the 4th webinar, and it was clearly mentioned that any syllabus area can be tested. So you cannot test your luck. You cannot predict anything, because as I mentioned earlier, you have to think in a practical manner. You have to think actually, think as if you are actually working for this company. And when you are working for this company, even if you are the CEO, you are not in a position to predict what your company is going to face in the future. So don't try to predict the type of questions which will be thrown at you at your exam. Okay, Davis is asking question. Hi, if your theory knowledge is not 100% up to speed, if you come up with general practical solutions, do you have a chance? Yeah, Davis, that's exactly what I highlighted throughout this workshop. If you're struggling with something, don't worry, come up with a practical answer, because decision makers, when just think that we're actually working within this company, and when working within this company, are you expected to remember theories? Because in real life, no one remembers theory. Okay, you will simply come up with a practical recommendation. You will conduct an evaluation in the most practical manner. As long as you back up your arguments with appropriate justifications, as long as you relate to the unseen info, you are going to pass this exam. So don't think about being all theoretical at the exam, because in a real life corporate setting, whenever you are involved with decision making, you are not going to take your books and go through theories. Instead, utilizing your knowledge and experience, you will try to come up with the best type of solutions. That's the exact same mentality you need to possess at your real exam. I hope I addressed your concern. Musonda is asking a question. The question that refer to the vision, mission, and values, and also the ethics consideration of the company. Do you have to mention exactly what is written on vision, mission, and value? Well, yes. When talking about the vision and mission, simply you have access. You have access to the pre-scene during your examination. So scroll to the relevant page and simply reiterate the vision and mission. And when it comes to considering about the values, when conducting an evaluation, for instance, only focus on the values which are relevant to the unseen. There are 5 values. All 5 values are not going to be relevant to each and every unseen. So simply consider only the relevant values which are aligned with the information highlighted within the unseen. And you have mentioned about ethics. There's no mention about um, ethics related practices at Cewmlator within the pre-scene. So when you are tackling questions to do with ethics, utilize the COPPI framework, or the confidentiality, objectivity, professional competence and due care, professional behavior and integrity framework. And you are not expected to evaluate all five or utilize all five elements when conducting an evaluation. Instead, think about which ethical principles are questioned based on the information presented in the unseen. And if you figure out that only three ethical principles are relevant to the unseen at hand, then only focus on these three elements and conduct your evaluation. I hope I addressed your concern. Zoom UC is asking a question. So if Cewmlator has a cyber attack and share prices drop, will that be unsystematic risk? Definitely. If it's not impacting the entire industry, but just us, then it exposes us to unsystematic risk. And is asking a question, could a question topic like SF appear in, let's say, variant 1, but could it also appear? No. Variant 3 or each topic only asked once in all 6 variants. So you're talking about variants, or does it depend on what unseen is in the exam that drives this question topic? SF appear in, let's say, variant. Yeah, so a question tied to SF framework can appear in various different variants. And although this is the case, and your job is not to predict what is going to be tested at the exam, because as I mentioned earlier, your practical decision making skills and capabilities are tested. So you're not in a position to predict what can be tested. You have to think in a practical manner, because as I mentioned previously, even if you are the CEO, you won't know what type of issues the company is going to face tomorrow. So don't try to predict anything. If you know what the SCS framework is and how to utilize it, irrespective of what appears within the unseen, you can easily utilize the SCS framework, considering various different scenarios. So don't worry about these things, and simply focus your attention towards revising, and try to relax. Don't try to overburden yourself by trying to predict variance. If I'm not in a position to predict what can be tested at the exam, how can you predict something? I've been a CIMA tutor for 10 plus years now. Still, I can't predict anything. That's why I've developed 63 subtasks to make sure that I cover all elements, rather than trying to predict anything. Because if I had that capability, I could have just developed 3 to 4 mock exams and relaxed, rather than spending a lot of time to develop 7 mock exams. So don't think about these things at this moment. I hope I addressed your concern. And is asking a question in relation to the exam platform. Does the scratch pad disappear for each question? Also, can you copy and paste from the pre-scene to the answer section? And you can't copy and paste anything. That's that. And yeah, so once you're in a certain section, you will have access to a scratch pad. Let's assume you're done with section number 1 and you utilize your scratch pad. But when you're in section number 2, everything which appeared on the scratch pad will disappear, and you will have access to a fresh and new scratch pad. So if you have a tendency to develop the answer plan in the scratch pad, don't do so at the examination. Instead, as I've mentioned in the third webinar, if you want to develop the answer plan, do it on the answer screen itself. When you do so, you are taking steps not to miss any of the points which you intended to include in your answer. So if you want to jot down something concerning some information, if you want to develop a short note of the entire unseen, utilize the scratch pad. Unless and otherwise, when it comes to developing your answers or developing your answer plans, do it on your answer screen. I hope I addressed your concern. And anything else, folks? Zoom user is asking pass mark is 54. As a percentage, it's 54%, but you need to score 80 marks out of 150. I'm amazed that you're asking this question at this juncture, uh, just 2 days before the exam. You need to score 80 to pass. Zoom user is asking, isn't the paper marked out of 100? There's a weighing system. You are getting your final score out of 150. Anything else, folks? I hope I addressed everything. All right, seems like there aren't any questions, so I'm going to move on. So if you want to contact us in these final days, you can do so via our website, which is www.study@tcs.com, or you can email us at info@study@tcs.com. If you need instantaneous support, drop us a message via this WhatsApp number. And if you are yet to follow us on our social media handles, I invite you guys to follow each of our social media handles. And before walking into the examination, read our blog post, because it carries all the information about your company's internals and externals in a nutshell. So having said that, I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much for joining each of the 8 sessions which we conducted on a weekly basis, focused on the upcoming SCS exams. I hope you gained something out of each session. So as I mentioned earlier, you have put in all the effort, you have done the hard yards. So start relaxing right now, because at the exam, it's simply a matter of managing your stress levels, because you have learned everything which is necessary. You have gained a lot of knowledge, and you have practiced your answering, time management and stress management techniques under exam conditions. So during the exam, if you manage your stress levels, you will come up with the best type of decisions. And when you come up with the best type of decisions, you will easily pass this examination. So with the intention of managing your stress levels, stick to the exam technique routine which you have practiced so far. And even after doing so, if you feel stressed, focus on your breathing, get out of a stressful situation, switch off your amygdala, and make sure that you are thinking through your prefrontal cortex, because if you think through your prefrontal cortex, you will come up with the best type of answers. And after you're done with this, I wish you the best of luck for your PER process as well. which will ensure that you become fully qualified management accountants. And I wish you the best of luck for your future endeavors as well. Thank you. Take care and be confident.